Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. Today on The Big Picture, I welcome back one of our regular guests, Mickey Kearns, our Erie County Clerk. And we're going to have a discussion today basically about conditions that go on politically throughout New York State and throughout the country. You know, what's happening with Trump, what's our governor up to. Anyway, welcome to the show, Mickey. I think it's going to be a good discussion. Let me start out with a statement that Kathy Hochul made not too long ago. I think it was right around the middle of February. She was talking about how Trump mistreats public employees and how if you're a public employee nationally, come to New York because we love our public servants and we treat them well, and you know, you won't be sorry because New York State's a great place for public employees. This was at the same time she was threatening corrections officers with jail time, loss of benefits, being fired. The contrast is incredible. Let's look at the video and then we'll come back, we'll take a look at it.
The current regime in Washington may not recognize your talents, but I can assure you, New York State does. We don't vilify public servants, we value you. We cherish your contributions, and we do want to welcome you to the New York family. So we just launched a campaign to recruit federal workers ousted by the Trump-Musk administration. Got what I think is a rather clever design. Really detailed information on how to get out of the situation they're in, talking about specific programs, our Veterans Temporary Hiring Program, how we have a program that'll temporarily remove the civil service exam so we can get people in sooner, the Empire Fellows Program. Here's real information on how to get yourself a job here in the state of New York. It's important. So our message is simple. While DOJ says you're fired, we say you're hired.
One might say that's a little hypocritical. What's your opinion on the way she handled the corrections officers and how she can turn around in the same breath and criticize Trump for getting rid of waste and employees that don't show up or whatever?
Phil, thanks for having me. I love being on your show. It's so informative. I feel terrible for the men and women who go into these prisons and have to deal with sometimes very dangerous people, murderers, rapists, pedophiles, and they're facing the conditions that they're facing. This isn't something that's new. These are conditions where they are understaffed, they are overworked, mandatory overtime. It is not good for families when people don't have schedules. So once again, it is hypocritical that we have the governor sort of preaching to these people, won't even come to speak with them, and they have to get to the point where they break the Taylor law. And many of these people are really great people, and it goes to show you that in New York State, we're having a hard time filling positions. Mm-hmm. Just imagine in the old days, these positions were somewhat political plums, where local government officials used to hand these jobs out. They would be handed down from the governor down to maybe the mayor or to the county executive. So we have a problem in government today where we have our top official disrespecting people who are hardworking, who are just trying to put food on the table for their families. They're trying to go home at the end of their shift and to see their families. I was at the McKinley Mall not even less than a week ago, and I was approached by a gentleman, and there he was spending time with his wife and 3 children. They were going and having some food at the table, and he approached me, and he said, Mickey, it's not about what we're making, it's about the time away from our families. So working conditions are really paramount to people. We see that in all law enforcement positions. And to me, it is quite hypocritical when we have someone saying, look, you're going to have to work in these extreme conditions and just do it.
You know, I was talking to a retired corrections officer. He had just retired after 33 years. And I was in a store, and he was talking to a fellow retired corrections officer. They started in the same class. After 33 years, they both retired. They were explaining what some of the conditions are that the corrections officers go through. They said it used to be if an inmate would attack a corrections officer, injure him, whatever, if there was bad behavior on the part of an inmate, there would be consequences. They could have additional years put under their sentence, or they could have privileges removed. You know, there were real consequences to bad behavior. He said that as of late, and this is one of the things that the correction officers are addressing, there is no consequence. By law, they've been prevented now from having any punishment for inmates' bad behavior. He said an inmate can come up and slash a corrections officer with a razor blade, and then basically put their hands out, lay down on the floor, and give himself up, and there will be no punishment whatsoever. None. No loss of privileges, no extra time on sentences. So there's no real incentive for prisoners to treat corrections officers humanely. You would think it would be the other way around. You would be protecting prisoners from guards, but that's not the case. Guards are being abused, and New York State is not backing up the guards in protecting them while they're doing their job. And that's part of, I mean, it sounded crazy to hear that from somebody who has the experience.
Phil, when I was in Albany, I was a New York State Assembly member. Nyskoba, who represents many of the correction officers, they in the Capitol put together a room which would be solitary confinement. And I was asked by one of the progressive groups to come in and walk through this room. And I said to them, if this is solitary confinement, I grew up in solitary confinement because my room with my sister Joanne, we shared a room because I was one of 6 children, was smaller than solitary confinement. So Mom and Dad, I know you're up in heaven and you'll be celebrating St. Patrick's Day up there with everyone else, but I was in solitary confinement. My point being is that Albany lacks common sense and the decriminalizing of these laws. And you have Albany, and I was there, they've swung so far to the left, whether it's bail reform, whether it's the HALT Act. We have to do better. And if you listen to the prisoners, it's not only the corrections officers, as you stated, many of the prisoners are coming out saying, we need to be protected because in the class of prison systems, of the hierarchy of who runs these places from the standpoint of among inmates, there are some bad people there. And I said, you have murderers. And my assistant and I took a tour of Attica. And I remember brushing up against a gentleman, and I said, oh, excuse me. And the guy said, oh, that guy killed 3 people. I go, well, aren't you supposed to protect me? But common sense is gone. And I think what we're talking about here is the hypocrisy of state government. This HALT Act, I know what they're trying to do. There has to be consequences. When you break the law, whether you're in jail or out of jail prior to going to jail, there has to be a deterrent. And right now in our society, there isn't a deterrent, and especially in New York State where you could be arrested multiple times and be let out on bail without any consequences. We have some serious issues, and there needs to be some type of reform, maybe not to the Rockefeller laws, but reforms on getting back to the basics of law and order.
Well, New York State is kind of unique in the country. I think California is in the kind of the same boat, but we're like the second highest taxed state. There's been a report, and I'll show the graphic. The New York State Business Council put out a report last fall that over the last 3 years, New York State has lost almost $1 trillion in value and assets to other states.
Absolutely.
Almost $1 trillion. And that says something about how within our state things are being run. And one of the things that and we've talked about this before, but I think in the 4 years that Joe Biden was president, I think if you're honest and you've paid any attention, you'll probably admit, at least half-heartedly admit, that Joe Biden didn't make many decisions, if any, on his own. He was told what to say, what to read on the teleprompter, and basically somebody behind the scenes was in charge of policy and directives. I think in New York State, I've interviewed Kathy Hochul, and she's, and I've said this before, I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of politicians over the years. Kathy Hochul was the only one that would refuse to the interview unless she knew the questions ahead of time. Based on my conversations with her, based on my observations, I think for different reasons, the situation is similar. There are people behind the scenes making decisions, telling her what policies to put forward and what to say, and basically she's a figurehead. I don't know who's running New York State, but I don't think there's any consequences for them because they're not elected officials. And that's part of the problem. There's a lot of inefficiencies with government. That, to me, is one of the most maddening parts of it.
You know, government is complicated, right? I've served at the state level. I've served now at the county level. I've served at the local level. I was a City of Buffalo council member. So I've been part of 3 budgets. And, you know, you can review, you can reinvent government, but it has to be assessed, it has to be reviewed, and it has to be continually looked at in order to give the best possible product. It would be like we talked about the DMV. And if I'm constantly looking at it, talking to staff, talking to managers, how can we do better? We just instituted with the Real ID an express line. I was out with my assistant and I heard that, hey, I'm going in and I'm not getting taken care of right away. We pivoted, we adjusted, we created an express line. And I think one of the things, Phil, that we're going to see that government is going to have a hard time with in the future. And the private sector, they've already transitioned after COVID, is technology. Technology is the game changer because with technology you need less people. And that's something that we're going to have to look at. And technology can bring better service and more efficiencies. But that's going to be something we're going to have to review in the future. And technology's here. Technology, you could do things at the DMV. Obviously, we have auto bureaus, and we can do things online.
Well, you know, we've got about 30 seconds left in this segment, but unbeknownst to you, I went to the DMV here in the Eastern Hills, and I had like 4 transactions to do. And I walked in, and the lady at the window for information said, "Oh, simple renewals, I can help you right here." She had me out in 4.5 minutes.
Good.
And it was incredible, the experience of going in there and being taken care of. When my turn came up, she took care of it right away. And I had to bring that up. And you know, no other issues, no other reasons, but you should be proud of how that works, because I can remember the DMV years ago where you had to bring a lunch or a sleeping bag for overnight. This is a different DMV, and it's really, it's working out quite well. So anyway, we're up against it right now for a break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about similar issues only on the national scale and how it affects you and your lifestyle. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Big Picture. My guest is Mickey Kearns, Erie County Clerk, and we're talking about the political system, you know, both in New York State and locally and nationally. This segment will get into what's happening in Washington, But one thing I wanted to cover from last segment that I didn't get to, and that is a report that came out from the New York State Comptroller's Office. This came out a couple of years ago, but it basically says that school districts in the area, specifically the report that I'm referring to is about the Clarence School District. This report, in black and white, says that the school district abused the population, the taxpayer, and was not in compliance with the law, in that the Clarence School District was hiding $7.3 million in surplus funds and turning around and telling the people of Clarence, if you don't give us a tax increase, we're going to be broke, and we're going to cut programs. We'll cut sports programs and musical instructions and various after-school activities. And the people of Clarence are good-hearted, and as most of us, we want to protect the education of our children. And they, year after year, they increase the budget because the school board says, we need it, we're broke. Well, the state controller's office said, that's not true. They're breaking the law. And from what I've heard, Williamsville is even worse. Instead of $7 million, they had almost $17 million in surplus, and yet still asked for tax increases. My question to you is, when government misbehaves, government is in charge. Who holds government accountable? How can we get this taken care of?
I think at different levels of government, Phil, different people have different responsibilities. You talked about the federal government. You have the Justice Department. We've heard a lot about them. Their overreach of certain issues. Now you go to the state, and as you noted, the state controller has a fiduciary duty and obligation to review budgets. And I think one of the things that is important is some of those laws that people don't really think are important. They were important to me when I was in Albany. I used Robert Freeman's office, freedom of information, open meetings, transparency. You talked about where are we getting real information from? And you should have access to that information. That's not confidential information. Budgets shouldn't be done behind closed doors. There should be open meetings. And I think that's part of it. And when there is an issue, that's where the state attorney general could come in and do a review. And of course, we want to stop waste, fraud, and abuse. So at different levels, we'll use the city of Buffalo as an example. There's a elected city controller, independent from the mayor and the Buffalo Common Council. And she does a great job, and her job is to review the financials and give an independent review above and beyond the elected officials. So some of the things I think we don't think about, but think about open meeting laws and making sure that whenever enough elected officials are getting together to talk about the budget in an open public venue, that the public has an opportunity to be there. And then the final thing that we don't talk about, and I just gave this presentation before the Erie County Charter Review Commission, and I'm very honored to announce that former Congressman Jacobs is my appointment to that commission, is public comment. One of the biggest abusers of public comment is the Erie County Legislature. You talk about backdoor deals. They do not have public comment and allow people to comment at their meetings. They don't streamline their meetings. They're back in the 1950s. I don't know what they're doing, but so once again, you bring up a very important word, accountability. But also, in my opinion, there's another word too, is transparency. So you got to have one. They're like peanut butter and jelly. They're complements. You can't have one without the other.
Well, I invite anyone from the Williamsville School District or the Clarence School District to come on and address this issue, because I'm talking about a report that came out that says you're in violation of the law. You're not being honest with your taxpayers. I may be wrong on a lot of this. I just read the report. If you want to come in and address the report, I'll give you the airtime. We can do a show on it, and you can tell me how the report is different from reality, or you can defend the actions of the school board. the time will be yours. And anyway, so, that's something it drives me crazy is, when government is in charge, who holds government to account for misbehaving? That brings us to, and we don't have a lot of time, but that brings us to national politics. And Trump is now, in his first 60 days, he's hit the ground running. He's attacking waste and corruption. People, like he said, he's collecting Social Security. One person is over the age of 350 years. Over 1 million people are over the age of 150 years old. That's outright fraud and waste for the average taxpayer. I used this before, it's like a cancer patient and they have a huge tumor, and if this tumor isn't removed, they're going to die. But the operation is painful, and they're going to come out of the operation weaker and a lot worse for wear, but eventually they're going to recover and they're going to live their lives. And it's the same thing with what Trump is doing, I think, and that's basically he's cutting out the waste in a bureaucracy that's established itself over generations, and that's no easy task. I'm not sure how you see that, but I know a lot of people condemn what's happening or are afraid of what its effect on the economy is going to be.
It's a huge impact. If you're a student of history, I'll go back to 1940s under Harry Truman when he was a senator. And if you read his book, he found a tremendous amount of fraud by the military-industrial complex. Of course, he went on to become president of the United States. He was followed by Dwight Eisenhower, and in Dwight Eisenhower's last speech before John Kennedy became president, he said, "Beware of the military-industrial complex." We know about the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the military was trying to push us into a nuclear war. We were going to bomb Cuba and possibly talk about mutual destruction. It goes on and on. The Gulf of Tonkin with Lyndon Johnson. We were never fired upon. Over and over again, Phil, it comes down to the truth. And our elected officials at the federal level cannot lie to us anymore. There is so much misrepresentation of facts. So I think what needs to be done, everyone knows how important Social Security is to the average person. It is proven that most of our seniors, that's their security net to keep them out of poverty. So I think any agency should be reviewed and looked at because we shouldn't have abuses. And once those abuses are proven, then hopefully they're fixed. And we need to recover those funds because money is tight, because we have been sending a lot of money to foreign countries. And as the current president says, he's trying to put America first.
Well, there's a lot of complaints about what he's doing, and a lot of people, especially on the Democrat side, are attacking him personally. They're attacking Elon Musk personally. They're not looking at the intention and the benefits that will come with eliminating waste or excessive bureaucracies. They're basically condemning the effort. And we only have a minute left, and I think this is worth a whole show. Maybe I can hold you over to do another show. But the Democrat Party seems to be lost right now, because I have not heard one Democrat publicly suggest an alternative or a game plan for how we go forward. All they're doing predominantly is attacking what's happening with Trump and attacking him personally, basically. That's not productive, and it's not good for the Democrat Party, I don't believe.
Abraham Lincoln, I told you earlier, student of history, Abraham Lincoln and Douglas, they debated. We need more debate. We have our elected officials in Washington. Their biggest debate is how much money they're going to get from some type of lobbyist. It's got to end, and you're right, Phil. We need a whole show on this, and people have to pay attention, and our media has to open up their eyes and ears and give us facts, not commentary.
Okay, well, I think I'm being told that we're supposed to wrap up. I'm going to see if we can do another show and get into what's happening. There's so much to talk about. It's happening with the economy, with the bureaucracy, with the fraud and waste, with Greenland and the Gulf of America, and that's going to be an interesting conversation, and it's worth a whole show by itself. So tune in for future shows on The Big Picture every Monday night at 8 o'clock. It'll be interesting because there's no other show in Western New York that talks like this, and it shows you, for instance, with Mickey, it's not a canned speech. It's a reflection of beliefs and personality, and you get to know the people who you vote for. I think it's very valuable. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching The Big Picture. I want to thank you for watching WBBZ-TV. We're your local station. We're doing this for you. If you like it, tune in, tell your friends and neighbors about it, and we'll see you next time on The Big Picture.